Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you this evening on the Mike Francesa channel, on the Bet Rivers Network on YouTube, after we have placed half the Final Four in place in San Antonio. And to no surprise, both one seeds will be there as Duke wins their way to a Final Four to surprise nobody, and Florida survives to get to a Final Four. We won't have an All SEC a Final Four. We do have 2 1s already there, with 2 1s waiting in the wings tomorrow. Houston, a 3.5 point favorite against Tennessee, and Auburn, a 5.5 point favorite against Tom Izzo and Michigan State. That's what's left. Here's how I would categorize the doubleheader today. The first game was a great game, and Texas Tech gave us a lot of the best drama of this entire tournament with their performance against Arkansas, their great comeback, and then this game today. But they're going to return to Lubbock, and they are going to really rue the day that they didn't win this game, because this game was theirs to be won. Despite the heroics that Florida got, okay? Despite the fact that Clayton, who is the best clutch player in the country at the end of games, and he was again today. He started very slowly. He had 2 points with only a few minutes left in the first half, and he wound up with 30. And down the stretch, even though he struggled from 3 today, and twice, and these were critical mistakes, twice they fouled him from 3. And Stan Van Gundy, who I enjoy, he says some goofy things, but I enjoy his analysis. I think he knows the game very well, and he's not afraid to say something. Talked about how egregious that is to have anybody foul somebody from the 3-point line, because you're putting a high percentage guy on the foul line for 3 shots versus a shot that, even for a top player, is only a 40% shot. So it's a absolute killer, and they did it twice. And he got into the game from the foul line and then got hot from there. And he made some very big baskets, made the big threes, as you would expect, made the big baskets, made the free throws, and wound up with 30 points. But it was crushing. I mean, Tech had a 10-point lead with 6 minutes to play. They had a 9-point lead with 3 minutes to play. But those 2 1-and-1s that they missed the front end of were absolutely deadly. Williams missed the front end of the 1-and-1, and he's a good free throw shooter. And Toppin, who wound up with 20 points and 11 rebounds, but had a nightmare on the foul line, missed that 1-and-1. He was 0 for 5 from the foul line. And for the game, Texas Tech was 7 of 13, including those 2 with the lead. Twice, Florida put them on the line, and they missed the front ends of the 1-and-1s. That's 4 huge points they gave up, and momentum grabbers that they gave up. And then Florida comes down, makes the big baskets, gets the threes from Clayton, gets a couple of the players to contribute, especially one off the bench who wound up with a brilliant game today, and then is able to take control of the game, outlasting Texas Tech 16-4 to close out the game. They outscored them 16-4, but this wasn't just Florida making shots, and it was, let's be honest, it was Clayton making shots. He made the 3, then he got the ball in the lane, stepped back, and made another three. Obviously, he went 13 or 14 from the foul line. Um, he had 22 points in the second half. He had 13 points in the last 5 minutes. Uh, he was as good as advertised after having a very sluggish game in the regional semifinals. But uh, this is a game that Florida came back on, so give them credit. But this is a game that Texas Tech should have won. And if they had just handled things better, including those dreadful, so many times you cannot miss the front end of those 1-and-1s. They're 2 points, but they're also enormous momentum movers. When a team's coming back on you and you can make those free throws, it stops them cold. It it neutralizes a couple of possessions when you have to do that, and instead you don't. And they did get an open three. Williams got an open on three, and he missed it. The other night he made it. Tonight he missed it. It happens. But it was a very, very tough loss, and I thought Texas Tech played a terrific game. I thought they did a really good job. I thought Florida, it's funny, Florida has had some moments where they just look out of it, but they responded. Now they're in the Final Four. And obviously, they'll await the winner of the Michigan State Auburn game. Now, the second game, the shootout game, the game that was going to, and we all said it, was going to yield us, a 100-point winner, turned out to be not only a bore, but turned out to be just not a well played game. And Alabama could not run their offense against Duke. Duke was too strong, too big, too physical, too good on both ends of the floor, especially the defensive end of the floor against Alabama. Their size was a huge factor. They drove the ball to the basket. They made their free throws, as always. The Krzyzewski way, the rule that he and Bob Knight always preached to their team was we want to make more free throws than our opponent shoot. So we want our first number from the foul line to be higher in every game and for the season than the opponent's second number. Tonight, Alabama shot 14 free throws. Duke made 19 free throws. 19 of 22. They overpowered them. Yeah, they turned the ball over a couple of times. They did not get a great game from the floor from Cooper Flag. They didn't need it. But they drove the ball repeatedly. They completely out-physicaled Alabama, and they took the dominion of Alabama players out of their game. See, BYU couldn't guard Alabama. They couldn't keep Alabama from penetrating. They couldn't tempo them in any way. And Alabama beat you with penetration, with layups and dunks, and then kicks to open threes. They didn't get any of that tonight, and especially negated with the small guys who had such great games against BYU. In the BYU game, Sears and Holloway the two small Alabama guards, one the All-America, one who comes off the bench and is small and explosive. Okay? In that game against BYU on Thursday night, those two players shot, you ready? They scored 57 points. They were 16 of 29 from 3. They were 18 of 32 from the floor. Tonight, those two diminutive guards playing against the bigger Duke team that was so much better in the half court, so much better at taking away things and exposing Alabama. Those two tonight scored 11 points versus 57. From 3 tonight, they were 2 for 11. They were 16 for 29 against BYU. They were 2 for 11. And from the floor for the evening, they were 4 for 20. Instead of just dominating in every way, shooting a high number, a 50 percentile number, above 50% from the floor, above 50% from 3, scoring 57 points. Tonight they had 11 points and shot 4 of 20 from 3. So they took both of those little guards, Sears and Holloway, completely out of the game. And those are the two players that absolutely killed BYU. They couldn't get down the lane without getting their shots either blocked or interrupted. They were pushed around by Duke's size. Duke, when they got them in the half court, Alabama couldn't execute at all. They were running off and Holloway was taking 30-plus foot. He made his first one and was taking, just so he would have the ability to get the shot off clean, he was taking over 30-foot jumpers and wound up 2 for 8 in his 20 minutes on the floor and gave them no spark. And they got nothing from Sears, who has gone from bad game to good game to great game to bad game in this tournament, and now goes home. Duke completely dominated this game physically. Their size was an enormous factor. Their defensive efficiency, they're a top 5 team offensively and defensively, the only one in the country that's both. They run their offense. They drive the ball to the basket. They hit open shots. They didn't take a lot of threes tonight, but when they took threes, they made them. Tonight, they took 13 threes. They made 6. Alabama took 32 and made 8. They made 25 against BYU. They made 8 tonight. And they wound up scoring 65 points. In the second half, they scored 28 points. And it wound up being dominated by Duke tonight. In a game that was at 63-50 was over. They took it from 7 points to 13, and you knew right there that Alabama just could not run their offense and could not handle the size of Duke inside. They couldn't handle them on one end of the floor inside. They couldn't handle them on the other end of the floor inside. That was it. The game was over. So this Duke team with Cooper Flagg and with a lot of talent and with size and with pros and with everything that they have didn't have a great game tonight, but they executed enough. They didn't need the big scoring night from Cooper Flag that they needed against Arizona. Arizona gave them a far better performance than Arizona gave them a far better performance than Alabama did, and Duke rolls into the Final Four. Another good season for Alabama. Another trip to the Elite Eight, but another disappointing finish. So heartbreak for Texas Tech, who gave you everything they had, and disillusionment for Oates in Alabama, whose system was again spit out at the wrong time. So Duke arrives in mighty fashion. Florida has some things to work on, has created some question marks, but also has Clayton, who is a great late game finisher. That's his reputation, and he was there again to do it today, even on a day when he was not making his threes. He made 3 big ones down the stretch. That's the difference. He overcomes, even on a cold night, he overcomes what has to be overcome to make the clutch play. And that's impressive. Now, 2 games, and we're into a Final Four. Tennessee and Houston. Houston, a 3.5-point favorite. Houston survived Purdue, which was like a home game. I'm going to tell you this. It's going to be a Tennessee crowd. There's no question about it. It's going to be a Tennessee crowd. They're going to have bought up any seats they can get their hands on. They're going to be there in force. It's going to be as big a Tennessee crowd as it was a Purdue crowd. Guarantee you. So they're going to be fighting that again tomorrow. They're going to need Cryer to wake up. He had a nightmare the other night. They survived it. They made a great inbounds play, which we know. They played pretty good defense, and Purdue actually ran their offense pretty well. Tennessee's hot and cold offensively, but they're rugged defensively, and they can match Houston on the boards. Houston can push teams around. They didn't push Purdue around because of Purdue's execution, and Purdue, to its credit, did not turn over the ball as they have all season, as I thought they would against Houston, and they didn't. Houston needs to turn people over to get easy baskets. There will not be a lot of easy baskets in a Houston-Tennessee game, which will be a tight game. I think Houston's going to survive, but Tennessee is legitimately good team. And in the finale, it's another good matchup. As Auburn was stating, hey, how can Izzo ever be an underdog? Well, the SEC was the best league this year. For most of the year, Auburn was the best. And Auburn has not been good for the last 3 weeks. They turned the switch on and played like the Auburn team that was there all year for that 28-6 run that buried Michigan. Michigan went from being 7 points up to being out of the game on a blistering 28-6 run where they could do nothing. They couldn't stop Auburn. They couldn't score. And Auburn just completely just said, hey, we're now going to give you 5 minutes of basketball that you cannot do anything but melt under. And that's what happened. Auburn is the better team, but teams do not come any tougher than Michigan State. Foul trouble will be a very big factor in this game. How this game is called will be a very big factor in this game, because this will be a very, very physical game. And both teams can get hot, but both teams can be erratic from the perimeter. Auburn is supposed to win. Michigan State can absolutely win. I don't think either game tomorrow will break open the way Duke did. I thought of the 4 games. I liked Texas Tech as an underdog today because I liked the toughness and the way they showed. I thought that Florida would win like a 3-point game. Clayton was the difference, there's no question. Give them credit, but I still see a vulnerability in them. I thought that Alabama would have trouble matching the physicality, and also I thought Duke eventually would relegate the game to a slower pace, and Alabama was not going to do well in that pace. And their smaller guards were not going to do well in that pace, and they didn't. I never thought they'd be as bad as they were. I could never predict Sears would have a game like that, or that Holloway would miss all those shots. But once Duke gets out on you, their level of execution on both ends of the floor is so high that you're not coming back on them. That's why that night, well, that was without Cooper Flag, but that night when Carolina came back from 21 down and almost won the game, that was stunning because no one had come back on Duke all year. Duke is legitimately good. I mean, all these teams are good, but Duke can play at a little higher level and also has a level of physicality that, I mean, they got a bunch of pros on this. Anyway, Cooper Flagg's going to be the first player picked in the draft, and they got 3 other guys who are going to be in the NBA. There's a lot of talent on Duke. And the other guys can, the other night Proctor was off, but Flagg was on. Tonight, Flagg wasn't on, but Proctor was there. If you notice, there's games where Proctor gets 6, there's games where Proctor gets 19, 18, or 20, and exerts himself offensively. They have a lot of different answers, a lot of different weapons. So I think Houston wins tomorrow. I think the other game is a toss-up. I really do. I think it's a toss-up. Baseball. We can talk about the team that had 1 hit, or we can talk about the team that had 9 homers. I was playing golf today because it was warm. It was windy, really windy. The back 9 was incredibly windy, but it was warm today. I didn't play that well. My wife beat me by 7 strokes. I got home. I was getting texts. You see the Yankees? So I turned the game on just in time to see Judge hit a grand slammer and watch the rest of this homer brigade. And it was wild. I mean, it's early in the season. It happens. I mean, it's a nice way to, get your stats padded and away you go. But boy, I mean, 9 home runs, a Yankee record. I mean, that goes back a lot of teams. That goes back a lot of days. 9 home runs. Ruth and Garrick, Mantle and Maris. the Bronx Bombers of the early 30s. Don't put the great Yankee teams of the 90s in there because they didn't hit home runs that way. They hit a lot of home runs, but not like that. But great game, obviously, for Judge, and plenty of pop. You can tell Fried it's not going to be like that every day. Okay, you're not going to get that kind of run support. How many times you see 20 runs in a season? I don't remember the last time the Yankees. I didn't stay around to hear the last time the Yankees scored 20 runs in a season, and off the top of my head, I don't remember when it was. The Mets tonight got one hit. Soto got it. So after 3 games, the Mets are 1-2. Tonight they had one hit. Soto had a hit and a RBI and a walk. So his numbers are what you would expect. The thing to watch here as they finish up tomorrow with let's see who's pitching tomorrow. Stroman's pitching for the Yankees for the Mets. Mets off tomorrow? Why don't they have him in here? That's bizarre. Can't be off on a Sunday. This must be wrong. I got to double check that. Can they possibly be off on a Sunday? No. Is that possible? I guess so, huh? I didn't realize that. All right, well, the Yankees are playing the Brewers tomorrow. That's actually bizarre. Wow. Off on a Sunday? Is that really possible? Come on, let's double check that. See if that's actually true. Are they off on Sunday? I mean, I've never even heard of that. Who's off on a Sunday in baseball? I was thinking about Lindor and last year and the 1 for 21. And some guys are just slow starters. I mean, it happens. I mean, there's plenty of top players who just do not get out of the gate well. I mean, a lot of it because of cold weather. That wasn't the case so far, but they just take a while to get going. I mean, it happens. And obviously, Lindor probably was thinking, "Hey, the last thing I want to do," and he had a great season last year, as we know. But the last thing I want to do is open the season again dealing with a 1 for 31 start. And here he is after 3 games, and he hasn't, scratched the surface yet. And nor have a lot of other guys. I mean, you got Alonso hitting 111, you got Nimmo hitting under 200, you got Vientos hitting 91. Go down the list. So in the first couple of games here, they haven't obviously ripped the baseball. Conversely, in a couple of games, the Yankees have kind of ripped the baseball as they did today. I mean, to the tune of ridiculousness, having 20 runs scored and 16 hits, right, and nine home runs. I mean that's the kind of day you dream about. As I told you, I don't like the Yankee, and on a day when they score 20 runs, it isn't the day to get picky. I don't like the Yankee leadoff situation. I know there is not a distinct answer. I know that I would like to give Chisholm a chance to bat leadoff, but I know his on base percentage historically is not that great. Where where you think that that's gonna, his on base percentage last year was 260, so you really can't do that. And I don't think he would be disciplined enough to change that. You know, I don't think Volpe's again another guy who does not get a high on base percentage. They don't really have an answer, but I just don't like the idea of shuttling guys. And I know it's something that people make too much of, but I just would wish they had a guy that could set the table. And I wanted them to get one for a long time, and they just haven't been able to do it. So, not that I would worry this early in the season about anything like that. And it's always nice to get off to a good start rather than a bad start, but it really means absolutely zero. I mean, that's all there is to it. But if you're Lindor, you would hate to dig a hole, the kind of one that you dug last year, because it takes a long time to get out of that. And like I said, give Lindor credit, because after that, his year was just absolutely remarkable. It really was. Is there a reason that I'm missing why the Mets wouldn't be playing on Sunday? I didn't watch the game today, so I don't know if there's a something going on. But that is just highly unusual. Highly unusual. Mets are playing the Marlins on Monday. Astros are home against the Giants. Why would they not play on Sunday? It doesn't make any sense to me. But it sounds like that's the case. At least I looked in 2 places, and they're not scheduled tomorrow. That's actually kinda odd. I can't remember that happening very often, but seems to be the case. Um, uh, not worry about these guys not getting off to fast starts. You don't want everybody pressing. Like, there's going to be some question marks. Like, sort of, hey, every bat's gonna be magnified. Tonight I flipped over to watch him having at bat. I actually saw a couple of his at bats tonight. I saw the walk. I saw him ground the second, and they really got a kick out of when he grounded the second, the fans. And fans are going to react that way to the contract. That's all there is to it. It's not just this Yankee scorn thing that Yankee fans have right now. Oh, great, he failed. Oh, yeah, great. Look, Judge did this. And I understand that. It's human nature. He's the guy who walked away. How dare he walk away from the Yankees? Hey, he walked away for a king's ransom. It happens. All right, it happens. So there's going to be this Judge Soto scrutiny every day. And while Soto's off to just a fine start, his on base percentage is where you want it to be. He's already had 4 walks. He's batting 300. His OPS is well over 1,000. I mean, all the numbers you want. He's already hit a long ball. So yes, Judge turned around and had a good week today. We know that. Okay, it happens. All right. Again, Judge is going to put up better numbers than Soto will. He's going to hit more home runs. His numbers overall, he might not have as high an on base percentage. They'll probably score about the same number of runs. And Judge's on base percentage might be higher this year, especially if somebody isn't hot. Now, if Bellinger's hot, it's going to curtail it a little bit. Or if the guys around him in the order can actually protect him a little bit, then they'll throw him the baseball. But if he keeps hitting home runs like this, he's going to get a lot of walks. That's all there is to it. And we know Soto's going to get a lot of walks, and Soto's going to take a lot of walks. You will define both of their seasons as to how they impact the franchises in terms of on the field in big ways. Do they keep their teams in contention? Do they win games when they have to win games? Do they fill ballparks? Those are the things that is how, and then ultimately how they do in the postseason is going to define who they are. Now, listen, Judge is a better player. He's a better player. I understand his postseason travails, but he's a better player. We all know that. But Soto is an exceptional offensive player and a consistent one. And let's see how he leads the Mets. Just like let's see how Judge leads the Yankees. Soto came over last year and did everything you could have ever asked him to do and got every big hit that you needed him to get and left an indelible mark on that franchise that you wanted him back. So he did his job. Let's see if he has the same impact on the Mets. We know Judge is going to have an enormous impact on the Yankees. We know that. And until Judge gets to lift that trophy and have that, dominant, and he will eventually have that dominant postseason. It will come. But until it comes, people are going to, at that time of year, are going to be on him. That's the way it goes. Hey, before Roger Maris came to the team, they used to boo Mickey Mantle. It wasn't until the home run race of 61 that they started cherishing every Mantle at bat. And then the rest of his life, never heard them boo him. I shouldn't say never, because I did hear them boo him one day. And I told you, I was at the game in 1963. It was an early season game. And I didn't get to go to many games in those days. Somebody had to give us tickets. But we went to the game. And I still remember it. They were playing the Cleveland Indians. And it was early in the season because Mantle broke his foot on June 5th. And they were playing the Cleveland Indians, and it was Whitey Ford against Mudcat Grant. I still remember it. And Whitey actually hit a home run. And I think he only hit 3 home runs in his career, but he actually hit a home run that day. And it was either a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I can't recollect, and I've never gone back and looked. But it was definitely a day game, and it was a weekend. I think it was a Sunday, but it could have been a Saturday. And I wouldn't swear to one or the other. And Mantle struck out his first couple of times up. And when they brought him his glove, he's walking from the batter's box, and you're walking across the pitcher's mound, you're walking out to center field, and they bring you your glove. And he took his glove and he kicked it. And then he kicked his glove into center field as he was going back to center field, and the fans booed. And that's the only time in my whole life that I ever went to a game, all the way to the days of 68, where they, worshipped every at bat. When I saw him in 66, 67, 68, when they were terrible. When I made people stay around to see the second game of a doubleheader against the Cleveland Indians when the Yankees were terrible in 1965, just to see Sam McDowell strike. Oh, we can't leave till Mantle bats again. We can't leave till Mantle back in. And then Sam McDowell blowing Mantle away with these amazing fastballs. And the guy's like, we had to stay around because I don't know who was driving, but remember, I didn't have a dad, so I don't know who was driving. It wasn't my brother. But I talked to whoever took us to the game to please don't leave before Mantle, gets up again. And they agreed. And I got ridiculed because he got struck out on like 4 pitches by Sam McDowell, like for the 3rd time in the game. Sam struck out like 15 Yankees that day or whatever. Sam McDowell was something. And I did see him hit home runs in those later years. I did see him have some great days in those later years, have some big games, as a matter of fact. But in '66, he had a torrid streak before he pulled a hamstring in June, where he went wild. And I was at one of those games. He had a great game. And he was on a torrid streak. He had like an 8 home run week, and then he tore a muscle. He actually came up and played. He was so hot that he played in the second game of the doubleheader against the Angels. Again, I don't know. It was a Friday night. I don't remember the exact. I know. I don't have the exact date, but he was on a torrid streak in '66. And he said on the game, Mantle's so hot right now, he's going to play both ends of the doubleheader, which he didn't do. And he did. It was a twilight doubleheader. And in the second game, he hit a ball down the left field line, and he was running for a double, and he pulled the hamstring. He was out for weeks. Probably shouldn't have played that second game in a doubleheader. But that's the only time I ever remember after '61 that he ever got booed. That I saw. I'm sure there was another time, but early in his career, like in the '50s and stuff, they were unmerciful on him because they expected so much, especially pre '56. But even in the later '50s, until the Mantle Maris run for Ruth's record in '61, where Mickey, in those later days when he was getting beat up and trying to stay in the race, became the underdog in the race. And then they realized what they had in Mantle because he was theirs. He was homegrown. He had been there for over a decade. He'd won all those championships, and So listen, if you're judging, and you do everything, and he does everything, there'll still be scrutiny. And for Soto, because of that contract and what's expected of him this year, there'll be scrutiny, a lot of scrutiny. They just have to live with it. Tomorrow we'll put the final two teams on the road to the Final Four. We could have the second year ever, and it's been obviously a very chalky tournament. You had 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, and 1 versus 3. 7 of the top 8 teams in the country are here. It was St. John's that didn't make the Elite Eight. The first 2 ones have made it to the Final Four, and there was a year where all 4 teams did make it. All 4 ones did make it, only once. But it could definitely happen again. It didn't look like it was going to for Florida. And I'll tell you, if Texas Tech had made those 2 1-on-1s, Florida probably wouldn't be here. But they are. And that's what happens. We'll see you later.